After successfully bringing the Volcker-funded free market study into existence in the summer of 1946, Hayek was now seeking a teaching position for himself in the United States. He had lived in Britain and worked at the LSE for many years, and he was finally ready to migrate to where he believed the neoliberal center of gravity was shifting: America. Deliberations to create a place for Hayek in the economics department at Chicago began in the fall of 1948, 2 years after the launch of the free market study. But ironically, despite working so hard to bring the free market study to life, Hayek couldn't get the support he needed to enter the economics department. The road to serfdom was considered too popular of a work to risk identifying the department with it, but at the same time, they weren't opposed to finding another position for him at Chicago. Yet again, the combination of Leno and Hutchins engineered a solution by appointing Hayek to the Committee on Social Thought, an elite interdisciplinary PhD granting committee with a broad-based mission to oversee transdisciplinary scholarship. Previous appointments to the committee have included the writer T.S. Eliot and the political theorist Hannah Arendt, among other philosophers and historians. Hayek's appointment to the committee required only Hutchins' approval, and before long, Hayek accepted his Volcker-funded position at the Committee on Social Thought in 1950, where he would be able to supervise the free market study and all the neoliberal projects at Chicago that would follow. Director was now the head of the free market study, the privately funded centerpiece of the newly minted Chicago School, which was, in fact, a conglomeration of the economics department, the law school, and the business school. The program's personnel, as was selected by Director, comprised of Frank Knight, economics professor, Milton Friedman, economics professor and Director's brother-in-law, Theodore Schultz, chair of the economics department, Edward Levi, law professor, Wilbur Katz, dean of the law school, and Garfield Cox, dean of the business school. Soon after the free market study commenced in 1946, the group decided that they would focus on the issue of monopoly power, perhaps in the memory of Henry Simons, or perhaps to reflect the interests of their sponsor, Harold Leno. The study operated from 1946 to 1952, during which several curious things occurred. The first was that Simon's anti-monopoly liberalism was actually still preserved up until around 1950, when each of the study's main participants, Director, Friedman, and Levi, underwent sharp rightward transformations on the issue of monopoly and corporations. The second curious thing was that the American Road book that Leno was seeking never actually materialized by the end of the 5-year project. And yet, Leno's Volcker Fund agreed to bankroll yet another program at Chicago, ironically titled the Antitrust Project, with the same trio, Director, Friedman, and Levi, from 1953 to 1957. The span of these two Volcker-funded projects at Chicago constitute the window in which the second generation of the Chicago School deviated significantly from their older Chicago and ordo-liberal colleagues on the issue of monopoly power, and began propagating a new iteration of neoliberalism that completely omitted the danger of concentrated economic power. As we recall, Director, Knight, and Friedman were all present at the inaugural meeting of the Mont Pelerin Society in 1947, which occurred slightly less than 1 year following the beginning of the free market study. Incidentally, travel to Switzerland for all the American attendees had been paid for by the Volcker Fund. At the meeting, Director and Friedman engaged with the German ordo-liberals like Eucken and had no major disagreements about the dangers posed by monopoly power. However, unbeknownst to many, the study's funder, Leno, had been steadily exerting control over the program's course since its inception. From the outset, Leno inserted his business allies Loren Miller and Leonard Read, who were also present at the Mont Pelerin meeting, to oversee the progress of the free market study. Like Miller and Leno, Read was another key ally for the early neoliberal movement and was the founder of the Foundation for Economic Education, today considered one of the oldest libertarian organizations in the United States. Earlier in March 1946, Read acquired a loan from the Volcker Fund to purchase a large property in Irvington, New York, which he transformed into the headquarters of the FEE. The FEE specialized in publishing books, articles, and pamphlets that unflinchingly championed the superiority of a free market society. Like Leno and Miller, Read was also remarkably inflexible in his zeal for free market capitalism, and even criticized Simon's posthumously published Economic Policy for a Free Society in a letter to Director, who actually wrote the book's prefatory note. Some of us here have carefully gone over the galleys of Economic Policy for a Free Society by Henry Simons. We had hoped this was a piece we might assist in distributing, but it is so well loaded with the advocacy of collectivistic ideas that it falls entirely out of our field. The book states many positions with which we are in agreement, but personally, I do not believe that the cause of individual liberty and a free market economy will be aided by it. Figures like Leno, Reed, and Miller, who were now thoroughly enmeshed in the pro-market academic research they were commissioning, had no use for the anti-monopoly liberalism of Simons. Like the neoliberals themselves, they wanted a reformulation of liberalism, but molded to meet the present moment. They wanted to compound the advantage of American corporations over the multitude of destroyed countries in the world. They approved of a strong state, as long as it was using its authority to enshrine competition and free enterprise. A strong American state and strong American corporations were the best weapons to fight collectivism at home and abroad during the Cold War. And above all, they were eager to roll back the New Deal and eradicate the scourge of labor union activism across the United States. In Hayek and his followers, these figures found the intellectual ammunition they needed to fight the post-war paradigm.